Okay, the last thing I wanted to ask you is about kind of your expertise from your HPTI profile, because we've tested and talked with hundreds and hundreds of people about their personality profile, their report, and often what it takes the kind of the tack of saying this is how this is most useful for you in your career and how to use it. But one of the things we've kind of talked about but haven't directly asked is our profiles. Because we've talked about learning new things and information, and both of us are fairly high on curiosity. And fairly good, I would say, at learning from different situations, adapting to our environment, and taking on new information. So how do you think your profile, maybe curiosity in particular, applies to the type of work you do or work we do together?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I'm considerably older than you, as might be evidenced
Slightly.
slightly. And, it's an interesting thing. It's really great to work with someone who challenges you to, and I don't mean you overtly challenge, but you are very curious, probably more curious than I. You learn new things, you try different things, different platforms, different ways. We kind of have to talk it through. You challenge me to keep on top of the technology and figure out what a client needs and the kind of tech or the kind of way a client might work that is very 2020 rather than very 1990, because we do have some clients who are at who have been kind of at the 1990 stage.
Yeah, that's true. We have.
We have. And where you have to go into their office and have a conversation because even the phone isn't going to work.
Or send a fax, remember?
That's what fax is. When you don't even have a fax anymore. So, and I think the other thing is that I'm pretty high on risk approach. So I'm curious and I'll try some things, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And so, you have to have a business partner and people who work with you who are okay with risk approach. And the other thing is that, I'm pretty comfortable with sort of big picture, strategic kind of things. I'm very conscientious, as are you. And so we can have those conversations. But we have had people come in and work with us who are low on conscientiousness, and it's a real challenge. So, when you think about that, you have to understand, okay, you're looking for the spontaneity with someone who might be lower on conscientiousness, but I'm super high on conscientiousness, and I need stuff done on time and in a particular way. And we've had to figure that out, right? And every time we have one of those kinds of things where we're really similar on curiosity and I'm dealing with a client who is not, or a client who is even more curious than me, I do put things in terms of HPTI personality traits because I know them and I don't want to prejudge, but you really appreciate the differences. But for us, I think we really enjoy the learning and we really enjoy trying to figure out how to do things a different way.
Yeah, and it's good because I think the advantage of us working together is that we can bounce stuff back and forth, and we can test the new platforms out and stuff kind of between us before we use it with a client, right, to make sure stuff actually works. Because sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, or sometimes it takes a while to get stuff properly figured out and working. But I think you really need to adapt and to kind of learn that new stuff because the technology is not going to stop changing, right? Like it'll just keep outpacing us if we don't keep up with it. So I think it's useful to try and figure out what is generally useful for an organization or just what's useful for us in communicating, and just to try and test it out, because otherwise if we don't, and we don't leave each other and ourselves a bit of room to make mistakes and fail and to not use it right the first time, then we're never going to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting with clients because one of the things, if you're going to take on a project where you're going to try something new, you need to understand that no one's going to pay you to learn that.
Yeah.
You have to do that. You have to keep learning. You have to read. You have to look at different approaches, the different ways people are doing things. And I really don't want to be doing the same report for every client. I want to do something that works for them, that meets their needs, and that is something that we've tried and experienced. Because one client will want something done in one way and another in a completely different way, and you really need to respect what they want and what they need.
Yeah, so I think going back to some of the stuff we've talked about in previous videos is using that curiosity is important and asking the right questions and figuring out what the end result should look like, what the client wants and how they want to use that research or that project or that process. But making sure you've got that structure clear, right? So you know what they want and how they're going to use it so you can provide it at the end of it. But really, no two reports or research reports are going to look alike. Like, we can't do that much copying and pasting, because if we want it to be useful, practical, and relevant to a client, it needs to be an original piece of work.
Yeah, and I think that's really, and I mean, that's the risk approach piece, is that, you ask the client at the beginning maybe what they're looking for and how they want it presented, and whether they want recommendations or whether they want a list of options, or however, because if you don't ask those questions and you do the same report, you're probably not meeting the needs. And I really love the fact that in 15 years, if I look back on the work that we did 15 years ago, there's some things that are similar, but it's changed year by year. And that I feel like that curiosity people piece is so important to me as an entrepreneur and as a business owner. I want to try different things. I want to learn new ways.
Yeah, but I mean, the structure and the framework for how we approach any project is fairly similar. But the results of it could be vastly different depending on what we find out throughout that process.
Well said.
Thanks.